I'm going to talk briefly about self and peer assessment. What I'd like to um, cover in this presentation is to explain why some popular instructional methods are less effective than predicted, list the benefits to students of self and peer assessment, describe how to guide students into self and peer assessment, and identify a range of peer and self-assessment strategies. That last learning outcome I'm going to put in your ballpark because there's so many. I'm just going to touch on a few and give you some resources so that you can go out and find your own self and peer assessments that fit your classroom. Um, as far as when we look at the Hattie data, student reported grades is very, very high in impact factor. But exactly what that means has been argued within education. Um, just because students know what they're going to make, what does that have to do with achievement? Well, the first thing we need to do is to raise their expectations by raising their achievement. So there are some of Hattie's top performers. We look at that frequently, and all of these things are included in self and peer assessment, and all of them are very high. So, by combining them and thinking about peer and self assessment, we can see that we're going to have some very effective instructional strategies in our teaching. Okay, these are some things that we want to avoid, but we're not going to talk about those in our presentation today. They're just some things that we need to pay less attention to. This student peer and self assessment will get us more power in our instruction. What is self assessment and how does it work? Well, when students are taught to self assess and routinely provided with opportunities to do so, you see the effects here. They're more actively engaged, they're more likely to improve and extend their learning. They tend to increase their self efficacy as learners and they become lifelong learners. Self assessment can help students become those kind of effective learners that learn throughout their life. And that last point on this slide, I think, is particularly important because self assessment seems to be more important for us to include in our classroom to help the less effective learners. Okay, peer assessment. Students are receptive to learn from peers. They listen to peers better. Peers provide models that students uh, can accept right at the level where they are. And of course, all of us know that we learn more when we teach others. Self and peer assessment has the characteristics of good formative assessment. Formative, clear learning goals and outcome, clear assessment task, clear and accurate assessment criteria, valid models of excellence, and uh, clear focus on learning goals and pathways for improvement. In other words, we should design our peer and self-assessment the way we design any formative assessment with these characteristics. Okay, so how do we get there? We need to define self-evaluation for students. In other words, we help them understand that it's judging the quality of your work and finding ways to improve. Talk with students about the benefits so they know that why this is important. Introduce the process slowly, one step at a time. Students don't know how to do this effectively at first, but we can teach them. Work first as a whole class, doing the steps of the assessment together, and then introduce one strategy and practice it until students learn it so that they can use that strategy for self-assessment effectively and that strategy for peer assessment effectively before you go on to introduce others. And then when you start off, it's very helpful to use pre-designed forms because this focuses the students on an already evaluated and already clarified way to self or peer assess. Keep the focus on the learning objectives. They're not looking at everything, and you need to teach them that when they look at their own work and look at others' work, they're focusing on the learning objectives for that lesson or that piece of work. Teach the vocabulary of the assessment. Help them learn those specific ways to talk about the, um, the quality of a piece of work. And that's why the pre-designed forms can help you because they usually have the vocabulary built into the form. Of course, in peer assessment, you need to practice that mutual respect. Always talking in a way that builds the esteem of the one you're working with. Okay, the four-stage model involves students in defining the criteria that will be used for evaluation. We talked about letting students help you design rubrics. If you don't have time to let them help you design them, at least let them help you modify it. Put it up there and let them talk about it and see if they can make it clear. Because if they don't understand what they're trying to do, they're not going to be able to get there. Practice together on real work. Give students feedback on their self-evaluations. Let them know what a good job they did and how they can improve on their own evaluations and their peer evaluations. And then help them move into using those self and peer evaluations to actually say what steps are next. Here are just a couple that are very effective. Some way I keep this easy, okay, hard. I keep these at my student desk so they can tell me exactly where they are quickly, and we're all used to using them. Just flip up your card and tell me where you are. That gives me a student by student evaluation on the learning outcome, and it also, a quick overview, lets me know where the class is so I can plan my reteaching very quickly. Networking is always helpful. In this particular design, students identify themselves as red, yellow, or green, and then you tell them to network to get help on their work. If they're at a red, they need to find a student that's at a green or a yellow to get some good feedback. If they're at a yellow, they need to find someone that's at a green so they can get some really focused high-level feedback. And if they're green, they're not through. They need to find a yellow or a red so that they can help those students. This is a very useful beginning piece for peer and self-assessment. 2 stars and a wish. In other words, 2 things that you can see on your work or your peers' work that they have done really well. And then a wish, and that is, I wish next time you do this work, or I wish next time I do this work, I would strengthen it in this way. So 2 stars and a wish is a simple and clear way to begin giving self and peer assessment. I love this. I took this from you, my students. It's very metacognitive. Before you start class, what words do I associate with today's activity? And in other words, you have them predict the vocabulary that they will need. And also, why is this topic important to me? Then after the class, what words did I learn from today's class? What is clear about the topic and what I don't understand about the topic? It's a very good self-questioning metacognitive strategy for peer assessment. For self-assessment. Comment and correct. This is where students look at a piece of work and that has already been graded and marked, and then have the students in groups look at what went wrong, what did this piece of work not get right, and then comment on it. And then you can go ahead and graph with the class, what, uh, where did we seem to go wrong most? In other words, you can graph what learning outcome did we see to achieve, what learning outcome were we struggling with, and what learning outcome were we did we not get at all. And the students can um, take the piece of work that they're looking at and graph what they think is happening with that piece of work. And then you can look as a class and see where you think you are. Here's where a student graphed their own work on the right hand side, and you can see where a student graphed their work as a class, their achievement as a class on the left side. And you can see these are quick and easy, but students love to do this, and it helps them very quickly and helps you see where are we. What it does is it lets students know that learning is a progress, and wherever they are, they can go forward. This little piece of work is off a Seesaw, a great technology use in class. And students here did a little video on their work, what they thought was strong about it, what they struggle with, what they'd like to do better. And by making it into a video and presenting it to their class, making it available to their class and to their parents, they really take ownership of this piece of work, and their evaluation is very deep and very meaningful to them. Portfolio presentations are a very important and strong way for students to self-assess. They select the work they want to present and give them the questions they will be asked before the presentation, and give them feedback on their presentation so that you can make it a very rich interaction with the students. For example, here's a kindergartner. I told her beforehand, select the work that shows what you have learned. Tell me about it. Tell me what you learned, what was hardest, and what you liked best. Here's a fifth grader. I asked this class to select a piece of work from each of the disciplines: math, science, ELA, social studies, and then one work of their choice. And I ask them to explain how it shows what you have learned and tell what was most interesting. And tell what was hardest, tell what you want to work on, and what you want to go to next. Sorry about the bells that you got in this presentation. Okay, choose a level. This is very effective when you have tasks divided into different levels: beginning, getting there, and target. The students choose a task in pairs, complete it, and put it back so that they can see where they're working. If they're getting it right, then they move forward to the next level. If they need more practice, they work in that level. Another way to have students evaluate peer work or their own work is plus minus what's next. They just identify something that they were very strong in, something where they is questionable, that they want to know where they go next. Warm and cool feedback, again, quick and easy. A very positive comment, a comment of where they need to be stronger, and then ask them to say where their work or their peers' work needs to go next to make their presentation a little warmer, a little stronger. Okay, I'm going to give you this in a document so that you can download it. These are some pre-developed checklists and ideas for self and peer assessment. These checklist sites have checklists for everything. And again, one reason that they're very helpful is to help you develop the vocabulary for self and peer assessment, and for the students to develop the vocabulary for self and peer assessment using formed checklist is a good place to start when you're helping students learn to do peer and self assessment. These are some creative ideas, some strategies you can use, and go here and explore. And even if you're doing peer and self assessment, find some new ways to constantly expand your repertoire of peer and self assessment.